Okay, hear me out for a second. What if I told you that Australia just gave away $68 billion worth of gas for free while you were struggling to fill up your tank while you were being told by our Prime Minister in a national press conference to be mindful of your fuel consumption? This honestly made me laugh. Maybe take a bike, maybe walk to work, maybe even walk from home. How would you feel about that? Now, at the exact same time, our energy minister is out there telling us that this entire fuel shortage is because of panic buying. Well, look, we're just seeing a lot of people wanting extra diesel, particularly in regional Australia, and I do understand that, but we do need to have this conversation based on the facts, and the fact of the matter is we have enough diesel in Australia for our needs for the foreseeable future, and there is absolutely no need for panic. Basically, he is blaming you and he's blaming me. I mean, come on. Are we seriously going to believe that? Because the bone-chilling bit is that if we keep going down this path, if we keep giving away our gas for free, even after knowing what it is costing us, we are going to end up being the richest, poorest country in the world. Rich in resources, households poor. We will be a laughingstock, a country sitting on a massive natural resource, but with people living here who cannot afford a basic living. Hey guys, it's Scott here. Now, in this video, this will not be about how many barrels we have left. It is not about whether there is panic buying. It is not even about whether there will be food shortages or emergency plans. That is a completely separate conversation. I've done many videos on that. This video is about something very different that nobody, not even the media, is talking about right now. Brand new information, and I mean that very seriously. Now, latest research, real economic modeling, and actual numbers are now showing us what Australia would look like today if we had simply done two things properly. Number one, if we had produced enough oil to support our own economy and not be dependent on imports. And number two, if we had taxed our gas exports the same way every other major energy exporter in the world does. Now, in simple terms, what would Australia look like today if our energy sector were actually managed properly and strategically? Imagine if our government knew how to use our natural resources to build wealth and security for every single Aussie instead of giving it away. And this is not some hypothetical dream. This is backed by legit modeling. And when you actually see those numbers, I'm telling you right now, it is going to make your blood boil. It's not easy to digest when you find out that there is no way our situation would be this bad if we had just implemented two basic policies that the rest of the world has been following for decades. Now, before you say this is one government's fault, it is not. This goes back decades. This is multiple governments kicking the can down the road, avoiding tough decisions, and leaving us in this position today. And I guarantee you, no matter who you vote for coming up, this will not change. But when you start looking at these numbers, you start questioning everything. You start asking yourself, if we had taxed our gas properly, would we even have a budget deficit right now? Would we have $1 trillion debt? Would you be paying this much for fuel? Because I am telling you, managing our energy sector properly changes the entire game for Australia. Everything in this economy relies on energy. We are a major energy exporter. Why are we paying so much for energy? I'm talking about gas, electricity. I'm talking about oil. I'm talking about fuel, diesel, coal, the whole works. I'm talking about everything. So that is exactly what I'm going to show you in this video. I'm going to break down what is actually happening in the current oil crisis in numbers, what Australia would look like today if we had managed our energy sector properly, and finally, I'm going to show you exactly what these bad policies have cost us in absolute, undeniable numbers. So stick with me till the end because this is going to completely change how you think about the economy and what is happening in this country. Before I get into it, you know that I cover policy, property, and the economy every single day so that you understand what is happening with your money. So hit subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you can stay ahead of the curve and make the right financial decisions for yourself and for the people that you care about. All right, let's actually understand what is going on here. Because the oil crisis isn't because of the Middle East conflict alone. It was already building under the surface for years. And the Iran crisis in March 2026 just exposed how weak and vulnerable our system really is. There are two problems we are dealing with right now, and you need to understand both of them really, really clearly. Now, the first one is the external shock, which is the geopolitical crisis. Now, the Strait of Hormuz, we all know that really now everyone's very, very familiar with that particular strait is effectively disrupted. Oil prices have surged above $100 a barrel, and wholesale diesel prices in Australia have already jumped more than 60%. Supply chains are broken, global shipping is disrupted, and countries are now hoarding energy for themselves. We are all aware of this. Nothing new about that. But the second problem, and this is the bigger one, is the internal weakness of Australia's own energy system. Because even before this crisis, we were in no position to handle a shock like this. And we know that this world that we are living in is not stable. So not doing the homework here is a major, major failure. Imagine having $68 billion sitting in the system right now, compounding, generating returns being used to support households during a cost of living crisis. We wouldn't be talking about budget deficits. We wouldn't be talking about cutting spending. We would be talking about how to deploy surplus capital to build the future of this country. And it gets even more insane. If Australia had implemented a simple 25% tax on gas exports, we would be generating around $17 billion every single year. $17 billion. And what did Jin Chamas just say? The Iran crisis is going to cost the Australian economy around $16.5 billion. So think about that comparison. One policy decision, just one, would have completely offset the entire economic impact of this crisis. Now, it doesn't just stop there. Since the Iran crisis began, we could have already made around $1.1 billion in additional revenue if that tax was in place. During the peak of the Russia and Ukraine war, we would have generated $26.7 billion in revenue, which is about 14 times what the current PRRT tax system brings in, which is the current royalty system that we have on gas. And just to put that into context, between 2019 and 2025, Australia only collected around $1.4 billion per year from the PRRT. That is nothing compared to what we could have made. I mean, what's so difficult about taxing our oil exports? Other countries do it really well. Just replicate them. Look at Norway. Norway taxes its oil and gas sector at around 70 to 78%. And because of that, they have built a sovereign wealth fund worth around $1.7 trillion. So they don't have a debt of $1 trillion. They have cash sitting there of $1.7 trillion. That works out to roughly $250 to $300,000 per person sitting in the national wealth chest for people in Norway. They turned resources into wealth. We turned resources into a missed opportunity, into deficits, into debt, into cost of living crisis. We are one of the largest energy exporters in the world. Yet we are struggling with budget deficits, rising costs, and no financial buffer, while countries like Norway are sitting on generational wealth. This is absolutely infuriating. What a massive missed opportunity. And for example, look what we're paying for our energy bills, our fuel bills, our own gas bills. We should be paying 20%, 50% of that at least. Now let's compare that dream to what we are actually dealing with right now. The government has just decided to have the fuel excise to give households some relief, which sounds good on the surface, but that alone is going to cost around $255 billion in lost revenue. Let me show you how weak we are in a few numbers, because most people don't understand the severity of the position that we are potentially in. We only have 2 refineries left in the entire country, and together they only cover about 20% of our total fuel demand. That means 80 to 90% of everything we use is imported, which means we are almost entirely dependent on other countries to keep our economy running. That means we can't just ship in, crude oil. We've actually got to ship in a finished product. Now, combine that with the fact that Australia is supposed to hold 90 days of fuel reserves under International Energy Agency guidelines, but we only have around 30 to 35 days. That means in a real crisis, we are one of the most exposed countries in the developed world. How did we get here? Now, this goes back to policy decisions made during the peak of globalization when governments assumed that global trade would always be stable, supply chains would always be open, and imports would always be available. So we shut down refineries. We became dependent on imports, and we told ourselves that that was efficient. Looking back now, that assumption did not age well at all. Co-exposed it. The Russia-Ukraine war exposed it even more. And now the Iran crisis has completely shattered it. Other countries saw this coming and started diversifying, building reserves, and protecting supply chains, but Australia did nothing. We stayed dependent on the US, on Asia, on the Middle East, and now we are paying the price for that complacency. I would have to say one of the best examples is the United States of America. They are now 100% energy independent, and they flipped that around in a very short amount of time. We could do the same, and that's part of the reason why I'm talking about this video. Now, this part is going to sting. Remember, I told you at the beginning of this video that we would have been invincible had we known how to manage our energy sector better. Well, here it is. If Australia had known how to leverage its resources like other countries, if we had diversified our supply, if we had built reserves, and most importantly, if we had taxed our gas exports properly, this entire situation would look completely different. First of all, we would have had the money to build all the refineries and keep them running and have the infrastructure to be energy independent. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, according to Australia's Institute's live tracker, Australia has missed out on more than $68 billion in revenue since July 2022 just by not implementing a proper gas export tax. That is $68 billion gone. That breaks down to roughly $49.8 million every single day and about $348 million every single week, which is slipping through the cracks. Now, at the same time, when we are already running deficits, that just adds more pressure. On top of that, the Iran crisis itself is expected to cost the economy around $16.5 billion. Now, they always get these numbers wrong, so go ahead right now and double that number. So what are we doing here? We are losing revenue, we are increasing spending, and we are injecting more money into the system, which is causing more and more inflation. That means more pressure on prices, which means the RBA is more likely to keep interest rates higher for longer. Now, ultimately, who is paying for all of this? It is you. You pay for it. You pay for it through higher mortgage repayments because of higher interest rates. You pay for it through higher rents because of higher interest rates and higher cost of housing. You pay for it through higher cost of living all throughout the economy because of inflation. And potentially you pay for it through a recession, which could potentially hit this country. And it becomes more frustrating when you look at how well other countries are managing it. Other countries, when they face a supply crisis, they reduce demand, they ration fuel, they prioritize critical sectors. Australia is doing the opposite. We are making fuel cheaper in the short term, which sounds good. However, this increases demand and burns through reserves faster and makes the problem worse. Now, at the same time, we are still undertaxing our own gas exports and still giving away billions, still not building any real financial buffer. So now you can clearly see the contrast. Now, on one side, we have a country that manages its resources properly, builds wealth, absorbs shocks, and protects its people. On this side, we have a country that mismanages its resources, wastes revenue, then struggles every time there is a crisis. This is the big difference. We are more worried about social issues than we are about the security of our country moving forward. This is crazy. And this is exactly why I'm making this video, because you need to understand what is actually happening behind the scenes. You need to understand how these policies affect your life, and you need to understand that this country belongs to you. You are a citizen. These resources that we are giving away, they belong to you. The revenue that we are missing out on, that is your money. This country should not be running on beer taxes and HEX repayments or giving away billions of dollars in natural resources. We should have been one of the most prosperous economies in the world. We should have had buffers. We should have had stability. We should have been protected during crises like this. But we are not. And unless people start paying attention, unless people start asking questions, unless people start demanding better policies, nothing is going to change. That is why I do this every single day. That is why I break this down for you. Because the people making these decisions are not any smarter than you. They are not economists, they are not scientists, and they are not immune to bad decisions. Let's be real about that. So it's great that you're seeking to understand this. We do need to talk about this, and we need to raise our voices because we cannot afford to go through another crisis like this again. We've got to get everything set out, and we've got to put everything into order. This is the moment where things have to change. By the way, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I generally love to read every single comment which is left, and people ask me all the time, Scott, what are you personally doing about this? The one thing I can do is create a community of strong voices. And as that community grows and becomes stronger, then we cannot be ignored. I'll see you guys at the next video.